Máme tu 4 správy. Správu, ktorú predkladá poslanec Buzek, vnútorný trh s obnoviteľnými plynmi a zemným plynom a vodíkom, prepracované znenie. Správu, ktorú predkladá poslanec Gajer, spoločné pravidlá pre vnútorný trh s obnoviteľnými plynmi a zemným plynom a vodíkom. Správu, ktorú predkladá poslanec González Cezares, koncepcia trhu s elektrinou v Únii. A správu, ktorú predkladá tiež poslanec González Cezares, koncepcia trhu s elektrinou v Únii. Prvé bolo nariadenie, druhé smernica. A na úvod by som poprosil pána poslanca Buzeka ako spravodajcu. Proszę pana.
Dziękuję, panie przewodniczący, panie komisarzu. To jest szczególny dzień. Po porozumieniu paryskim w 2015 roku i po naszym pakiecie 3x20 z marca 2007 roku postępujemy w kierunku transformacji energetycznej ku rynkowi, który będzie miał tylko 2 nośniki energii. Będzie miał energię elektryczną z odnawialnych źródeł izotanu oraz wodór. Od 2019 roku to jest nasz Europejski Zielony Ład. Na tej sesji kończymy pracę nad paroma bardzo ważnymi aktami legislacyjnymi, bo wymaga to wszystko czasu, musi być też sprawiedliwe społecznie i racjonalne kosztowo. Działamy dokładnie w tym duchu. Wczoraj było rozporządzenie metanowe przegłosowane. To groziło początkowo zamknięciem kopalń na moim rodzinnym Śląsku niemal z dnia na dzień. Ale dobraliśmy takie rozwiązanie, że uratowaliśmy sytuację, a równocześnie będziemy wymuszać realne działania w kopalniach, które pozwolą na ograniczenie metanu. Podobnie jest z reformą rynku energii elektrycznej. Zagłosujemy nad nią dziś. Tam też, także dzięki naszym poprawkom, wygrał zdrowy rozsądek. Po pierwsze, znosimy limit cen energii dla tak zwanych instalacji inframarginalnych, aby rozwijać inwestycje OZE. I po drugie, do końca 2028 roku przedłużyliśmy derogację na wspieranie elektrowni węglowych z rynku mocy. Dla krajów takich jak Polska to kluczowe dla utrzymania bezpieczeństwa zasilania w energię elektryczną. Trzeba dobrze te 3,5 roku wykorzystać, bo kolejnej derogacji nie będzie, a przyszłość to OZE i zielony wodór. No i tu dochodzimy do pakietu wodorowo-gazowego, nad którym również za chwilę zagłosujemy. Pracowałem nad nim ponad 2 lata. To pierwsze tak kompleksowe ramy prawne dla rozwoju gospodarki wodorowej w historii. Kluczowe punkty w tym pakiecie wyglądają tak. Jeśli chodzi o rozdzielenie właścicielskie, to podobnie jak dotąd było dla gazu i dla elektryczności. Także rozróżniamy.
For gas and electricity in past, so we have a transit and distribution separately, and then subsidies, cross subsidies, and then inter-periodic allocation of costs. What does it actually mean? The cost of investment and then the cost of actually using the investments in hydrogen should be as low as possible. And then biomethane. We've managed to go down with tariffs. Also, when we access the grid, those costs will go down as well. And last but not least, support for mining regions. In line with just transition, will be able to do more and invest in hydrogen. Joint purchases when it comes to gas. This is something we've been waiting in the European Parliament for years. Obviously, Russia is excluded, but once we aggregate our needs, we will be able to get the product much cheaper, and will be able to include hydrogen in those joint purchases going forward. And then last but not least, we'll be able to do more when it comes to ban on natural gas imported from Russia. also new decisions in this regard in case of some geopolitical threats. It's a first, basically. So I would conclude saying that we definitely going forward when it comes to protection of our climate, when it comes to the protection of dignified life guaranteed for our citizen. Very decisive step, but very rational.
Thank you very much, Mr. Buzek. Now, Mr. Guy, you have the floor.
Danke, Herr Präsident.
Thank you, President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's an appropriate thing to do at the start of my speech to thank Mr. Buzek for the fantastic work he's done on this. He was the rapporteur for the gas market regulation, but shadow as well on the gas directive, and I don't think we could have worked any better than we actually did. I'd like to pick up on what he mentioned and start with methane. It's important that we've reached this regulation. It is of central importance that methane emissions around the world are reduced. Methane is more potent as a climate killer than CO2. And it's important for the Social Democrats as well and for the trade unions to make sure that what we do doesn't scare people in taking this step, and I think this was important for somebody who comes from the Ruhrgebiet, North Rhine-Westphalia, and looking at Silesian mining having its phase-out plans and that jobs not being lost, yet at the same time reducing methane emissions. Electricity markets are important, and it is important that we ensure competitiveness of our energy-intensive industries. We've seen some price shocks through COVID and the Russian war of aggression, and we need to look at how this works. I need to make it clear that I would have preferred to have seen a regulation that would have ensured a price for electricity at the European level rather than leaving it up to the member states to turn to the Commission and look for subsidy regulations, but that the European side could have made this something they could have facilitated, and this would have helped transition in the industry. But moving on to hydrogen, I'm very pleased that we managed to look at energy-intensive industries which are very difficult to decarbonise, chemicals, for example, steel, for example, and we put the focus on them in terms of the transition, and within the context, as far as is possible, try and make sure that these branches of industry are the ones that can decarbonise as quick as possible. We put these points at the start. In the network plans, we arranged them so that this could be successful. My proposal for the future is that if later on we do look at hydrogen auctions, that we have a basket that is kept aside for the offers for those industries that is specifically set aside for them. It's important to get rid of the obstacles to investment. I have to say, Commissioner, you've dealt with some things as if this is unexplored territory, as if we didn't have pipelines, if we didn't have transmission networks already in place. And the proposal from the Commission was as if there were no tools to guarantee hydrogen, because the opposite is indeed the case. So we've tried to work through the unbundling rules and worked on the lines that we've learnt from on gas. So we have network planning that has been included in this regulation, which at the level of the municipality you can have sector links set up where we can see where there's sources of energy that can be exploited. And this will contribute to making sure that the demand for energy in fossil fuel state to be reduced and make sure that the networks can kick in when the hydrogen market is there. Finally, what we need from the Commission is a delegated legal act on hydrogen, which will allow us to have a reliable access to hydrogen, but the objective of green hydrogen from renewable resources shouldn't be lost sight of either. Thank you. Thank you.
A teraz by som poprosil kolegu González.
The next speaker is Mr. González Cáceres.
Gracias.
Thank you very much, President. First of all, I'd like to thank all the shadow rapporteurs that worked hand in hand with me and Mrs. Graça Carvalho, among others, who's now the Energy Minister in Portugal and isn't here. In the summer of 2021, with electricity prices shooting through the roof, some members of the Socialist group said that the electricity market design was flawed. And then there, of course, was the whole issue of gas blackmail, but we didn't want to play this. I remember Teresa Ribeiro raised her voice and put forward pioneering measures that were very efficient, but the Commission didn't see this coming. Then we had the fierce Russian invasion of Ukraine, and prices shot through the roof. And this, of course, triggered inflation. So citizens were emptying their pockets, but at the same time others were filling their pockets at full speed, and that's what made us think about this. And that has brought us to the achievement of the Parliament, and especially the Socialist group. It is an achievement because many thought it wasn't necessary to overhaul the market. Many didn't think that the European Parliament could move so speedily, but we did so. We were even quicker than the Council. We managed to stand united and to quickly negotiate a reform that is already bearing fruit in the short term, but the benefits in the medium term and long term will even be more impressive. More consumer protection, better rights, contained prices for citizens and companies. So we have this very fast energy transition as a backdrop, and not only do we have to tackle the climate emergency, we also have to grapple with the fact that energy is being used as a weapon of war. And for all these reasons, we realize this reform was urgent. We have a very volatile situation, so we have to move forward. Now we have this decoupling when it comes to the short term to make sure that companies and consumers can make the most of reasonable prices, especially when it comes to forward prices. Then we want to promote storage, include renewable energy sources, and make sure demand plays a more important role. We're also enshrining rights such as energy saving and being able to sell the energy that you produce, which will help citizens. We also want the European Commission to act before June 2026 and come up with a report that will look at forward prices and any problems with marginal prices as well, and to see whether we can overhaul the reform. We have to make sure that the market knows that there is predictability and that we can act quickly if there are new crises. As a socialist, I'd like to say that we want to protect against the injustices that were taking place, because there were unilateral contract changes and even people losing power, being disconnected, and that is why now vulnerable consumers cannot be disconnected. So what is sensible, what is humane, and if we want to show solidarity, we have to act if there are problems in a market. It's also about climate change. We have to make sure we have more electricity, less fossil fuels, but more affordable renewable energy sources. Consumers need this predictability to be able to move forward with electrification. We need more electric cars and less CO2 emissions. So this is a reform for the present and for the future. And this reform would have not been possible without the whole negotiating team of the European Parliament behind this. And thanks to the Council, under the Spanish presidency, we managed to wrap this deal. And I'd like to thank all those who played a very important role, even those who aren't here today. We are on the right track, and the reform is already bearing fruit, and citizens are benefiting all over Europe. Thank you.
Gracias. A teraz by som poprosil kolegyňu Grappini.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Ms. Maria Grappini.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioner, colleagues. I think It is amazing for us to finish our mandate with this package. This is a very important one. As a shadow rapporteur for the IMCO committee, of course, we expected a lot from this. We wanted to protect consumers, and on the other hand, we wanted to look after SMEs, of course, because the pressure of utility prices could take them out of the market. And I would like to thank the entire team that worked on this package, because, as Mr. Geyer said, we improved the Commission's proposal, and I think this is an acceptable package. It's not ideal, of course. We can still work on the matter further on, and I think it's important that during the cold season we managed to get protection for consumers. It wasn't easy, but we managed, and I think now we have to be careful with implementation, because this is a shared responsibility with member states, and it's important to see how each member state will actually implement this very important package to regulate the energy market and the gas market. Thank you.
Ďakujem pekne a teraz poprosím za komisiu.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is on behalf of the Commission, Commissioner Reinders.
Thank you, President. Honourable members, I'm pleased to be here today for this very important occasion to endorse the electricity market design reform and the hydrogen and decarbonised gas markets package. I'm replacing, you know that, my colleague Kerry Simpson, who unfortunately could not be here today. These legislative initiatives are key for the decarbonisation of our energy system, for improving European energy security, and for boosting the competitiveness of the EU economy. This is achieved by bringing stability and predictability to the cost of energy and for investments. The EU integrated and interconnected energy market is our biggest asset, and its proper functioning is crucial. That is exactly what these legislative initiatives are about. Well-functioning energy markets are key to deliver the EU Green Deal and Repower EU plan objectives. The value that the markets create contributes directly to the EU competitiveness. I convey my warmest thanks to the rapporteurs, Mr. Buzek, Mr. Geyer and Mr. González Casares, and to the team of shadow rapporteurs for all your efforts and remarkable work in bringing these important files to a successful and ambitious conclusion. The Parliament played a key role in delivering this file. First and foremost, these legislative initiatives will accelerate the deployment and integration of renewable energy sources and create a more effective enabling framework. The electricity market design reform will promote power purchase agreements and contracts for difference. These instruments will ensure that the low and predictable cost of renewables are better reflected in consumer bills and thereby contribute to the affordability of prices. At the same time, these instruments will enhance revenue certainty for investors and thereby incentivize investments in renewables and low-carbon solutions that are needed to boost the energy transition. The hydrogen and gas package will enhance production and better integration in the gas network of renewable and low-carbon gases, including hydrogen and biomethane. The new framework also creates legal certainty for much-needed investment into the decarbonisation of the gas sector. For hydrogen, the new regulatory framework is based on proven principles of energy regulation which already apply to natural gas and electricity, notably third-party access and unbundling of energy networks. The reinforced requirements for mandatory 10-year network planning at national level will improve the efficiency of network development and frame the development of distribution network. The balanced compromise reached by the co-legislators on the European Organisation of Hydrogen Network Operators will benefit this network planning and the setting of network rules. These legislative acts will also make our energy system more resilient and competitive. With the electricity market design reform, the energy bills of European consumers and companies will be more independent from the short-term market price of electricity that is still often determined by power production using expensive fossil technologies. The gas package will strengthen the solidarity mechanism between the member states to ensure security of supply even in the most challenging circumstances. It will also give the member states an opportunity to restrict access to Russian gas in line with the REPowerEU objectives. The gas package also foresees the establishment of a permanent and voluntary mechanism for demand aggregation and joint purchasing of natural gas. Building on the experience of Aggregate EU, this mechanism will contribute to the further diversification away from Russian fossil fuels and displays a high level of cooperation among member states in line with the objectives defined again in REPowerEU. In addition, the gas and hydrogen regulation provides for a 5-year pilot mechanism for hydrogen market development, which will help connect European hydrogen off-takers to producers within the EU and globally. Finally, but equally important, the consumers are now better protected and empowered. Consumers will gain long-awaited rights and protections in the gas market, bringing them up to date with their rights as electricity consumers. Thanks to the electricity market design reform, energy sharing and diverse new electricity offers will become a reality, helping consumers to better control their energy bills. I'm looking forward to the plenary vote for these legislative files. Swift transposition and implementation of the new rules will be key to ensure that European citizens and companies can reap the benefits of a well-functioning internal energy market. The Commission will be a strong ally to Member States, stakeholders, people and businesses by fostering best practices for a smoother and more sustainable energy market for all. Thank you.
Ďakujem, pán komisár, a teraz by som poprosil kolegu.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And now I give the floor on behalf of the Econ Committee, Mr. Silva Pereira.
Obrigado.
Thank you very much, President. There's no strategic autonomy for the European Union if we are dependent on foreign countries for our energy. There cannot be a fair society if households and consumers who are most vulnerable are not fully protected from inflation in the energy sector and from energy poverty. These are the lessons that we can draw from Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and the lessons from the energy crisis it caused and the spiking energy prices. We now need to engage in an energy transition to confront the climate crisis. We need to move to renewables, decarbonize the economy, and we need to properly reform the electricity market, which is what we're discussing today. As draft person for the Econ Committee, I had two major concerns. First of all, to defend the poorest in our society against energy insecurity and price rises, and at the same time I wanted to ensure that there is no unsustainable distortion of the internal market. These concerns are fully respected in the deal achieved under the Spanish presidency, and I hope that we will have a more social, fairer energy market that is up to the challenges that we face. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Bouchard.
Thank you so much, dear President, dear Commissioner, dear colleagues. We are here today after long months and years of hard work and perseverance. And for the agreements reached, I would like to congratulate my colleagues, the rapporteurs, President Buzek, Mr. Gayer, and Mr. González Casares. Following the rise in energy prices in the light of post-COVID recovery, in the midst of Green Deal transformation and Russia's war of aggression in Ukraine, European Union has found itself struggling with extremely high energy prices and energy supply issues. With these packages of legislation, the EMD, gas and hydrogen, we have shown that we can react to the need of our citizens and to the rapid changes in the market and our economies. We show that we can deliver to our people. The new directive aims to decarbonize the EU's energy sector by ramping up the production of renewable gases and hydrogen and facilitating their integration into EU energy networks. It will also help secure energy supply in order to address both climate change and disruption of gas flows. It puts in place for member states to prevent disconnections and a clear and fair pricing for renewables. With the regulation, we will enable the uptake of renewable and low-carbon gases by facilitating connection and access to the existing gas grid, and this will reinforce energy security. The Parliament has fought for the potential that we saw in gas and hydrogen for the transitional period and for a clean economy. Therefore, this regulation secures also the benefit of integrated to the 3 European networks for hydrogen, electricity and gas. Thank you so much.
Ďakujem pekne a teraz poprosím kolegyňu Toja za...
Thank you very much. Now, Ms. Toya has the floor.
V Európskom parlamente. Nech sa páči.
Presidente, questa è una riforma...
Thank you, President. This is an important reform. It was said, and when we implement it, we'll realize how important it is. I'd like to highlight 3 aspects. First of all, we have designed the foundations that will underpin a hydrogen market that will flourish and a renewable gas market as well. We've looked at biomethane and how that can enter the grid and looking at the conditions. That means that we've created the conditions to develop markets that can help us change our energy mix. And Repower has contributed to that. Now, another important aspect that I feel very strongly about, and so does my group, is that we've set up scrutiny and transparency set up, especially when it comes to prices. We've had to pay too high a price in the past, the whole issue of how prices worked. Now we have REMIT, and now Acer and other authorities will be responsible for making sure that what has happened in the past doesn't happen in the future, and all of this based on transparency. And then we also need to move towards an energy union. It shouldn't be member states pitted against each other, but we really need a proper, genuine energy union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Groshang has the floor.
Honourable members, the energy package before us is the result of more than 2 years of intensive negotiations. We had to respond to fast changing challenges in Europe. This was shaped by the Russian aggression in Ukraine. Part of this process was the gas storage regulation that helped to bring down energy prices. Now, our citizens are still to feel these results in their wallets, and we need to find out why, but in the new mandate, where we have to strengthen the functioning of the common market. We didn't achieve this fully. The package before us is a good starting point to achieve energy and climate goals, and we need to also ensure competitiveness of the European economy. It lays the legal and institutional foundations for the transition from a fossil-intensive to a carbon-free energy sector, and to make sure that the market will develop in proper coordination with the needs. Maybe this is not the answer to all the challenges ahead, but it does provide predictability that the European economy needs. Thank you.
Prosím kolegyňu Toussaint za skupinu Zelených.
The next speaker is Mrs. Toussaint.
Chers collègues.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no point adopting ambitious climate objectives and pushing for carbon neutrality if we're not in a position to programme a phase out of gas. In the package we have before us today, the only text of the whole Green Deal that deals with this crucial issue. It should have been an occasion to programme phasing out of gas by 2035, as the scientists have asked for, and anticipate this rather than undergoing a transition that's going to be inescapable for the EU anyway. But once again, the right, the Liberals, the Socialists have preferred to kowtow to the lobbies instead of protecting the European population and the climate. The gas operators could replace are now in a position to replace their fossil hydrogen with fossil gases of other natures. So fossil gases with fossil hydrogen. And we're still having to import Russian gas, something we've been asked to get out of in the Greens for 20 years. So we can see what might even get worse following the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So we cannot allow power cuts to be imposed on people who can't afford to pay. When you have precarious populations and vulnerable populations looking towards a cold winter, you cannot allow populations to remain unprotected. So you've got climate, you've got Russian attacks, and you've got the dignity of Europeans as well. You can count on us to continue the fight of justice, sovereignty and climate.
Merci. A teraz by som poprosil kolegu Tobišovského.
The next speaker will be Mr. Tobišovský.
Przewodniczący.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, today's debate and today's vote represents the end of over 2 years of work on the new hydrogen package. I think what's really important to underline is that when I observe what we have been doing for the past 2 years, I have to conclude that in this particular case, we end up with a document which is extremely important. It will represent fundaments for the markets created going forward. For this, I would like to thank everyone. I would like to thank Mr. Geyer, but also all other rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs, because I think it's actually rare in this House that with such important debates, despite our differences, we manage to reach consensus and provide future-proof solutions. Definitely, hydrogen is one of such solutions. It will replace more carbonized sources of energy. So we are all joined in our care for environment when we think about the future, and we choose such solutions. Hydrogen will be the fuel for the future for the steel industry, for marine transport, but not only. It will allow us to go creative, innovative, and diversify our sources. What's very important is to underline that, again, I would like to repeat, this is the basis for anything we decide with the market of hydrogen in the future. So it's an extremely important step. With this, we'll be able to fight for the fuel of the future so that its price is acceptable for all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Borchia from the Identity and Democracy Group. Thank you very much. Well, prices for households and companies are really important. Energy prices in Europe are too high. They affect the competitiveness of those who are trying to work. So that has to be the objective of this reform. We also need to have enough capacity to have the humility and self-criticism to look at the different factors that have led to our increasing energy dependence on foreign countries, and thus the absurd increases in prices, because our approach to date has not functioned. Look at the Parliament's position on the single entity. Well, this would overturn the current functioning of the European energy market and could be damaging to national systems. That could lead to the elimination of national energy exchanges to creating some kind of supranational one. We need to get the right balance between decarbonisation and competitiveness. Ideologically driven reforms end up massacring the market, consumers and companies. So Europe has to respond to that. The next speaker will be Mrs. Mesure from the Left Group.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Electricity is an essential good for almost all human activity, and yet you still insist on seeing it as a common or garden good that the markets should be left in charge of. So even though households and businesses and local authorities are asking for affordable prices, what do? You fix prices to help those who are running the markets in electricity, and the tariffs really are completely removed from the way production produces price. 37 billion euros will be passed on to us as us footing the bill, not because that's how much it costs, but because it's linked to the gas price and you want to maintain this system. With this so-called reform, everything remains the same. It's going to be a fiasco. We're not going to be producing more electricity than 20 years ago, but the speculators are selling it twice as expensive. We need to create a public electricity service which will ensure access at affordable prices in a low-carbon fashion for everybody, but that's not what's being done. We're going to see a 40% increase in the demand for electricity by 2030. Who's going to plan the production? Who's going to guarantee prices as low as possible to allow strategic industries to maintain their position? What about the survival of our households, our craftsmen, artisans, etc.? Nobody's doing that. So I call in this chamber to return to the path of reason. We need to reject this agreement. We need to come up with a genuine reform which will allow us to leave the electricity market. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Nicolau Alavanos from the non-attached members.
The directives and regulations we're discussing today showcase the anti-working class priorities of the EU, especially when it comes to the energy market. Against the backdrop of the EU's energy liberalisation, the energy stock exchange, you are tweaking financial instruments in order to continue beefing up big renewable energy and hydrogen companies. They are raking in profits while the workers sweat blood, and all of this against the backdrop of economic uncertainty and an escalating imperial war in Ukraine. Households are desperate. Energy prices, electricity prices are going up, food prices are going up, and so are other products, which means that households feel their wages disappear by the middle of the month. But the EU isn't losing any sleep, and neither is New Democracy in Greece. On the 9th of June, the people have a choice. They can decide to vote against the EU and the parties that make their life a living hell. They can vote for the Greek Communist Party in order to call into question the barbarian policies of the EU, making sure their needs are at the heart of everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mrs. Del Castillo Vera.
Presidente, Comisario.
President, Commissioner, the electricity market reform fulfills a threefold goal: to reduce wholesale price volatility, helping consumers. We want to make sure that energy prices are more predictable, and we want to boost investment in renewables. So the EP and Council agreement include important measures to promote all of this: two-way electricity agreements, contracts for difference, and all of this will help us make sure that we have more efficiency and to help nuclear power plants as well. And there can be no there cannot be any disconnections. We will be protecting more vulnerable consumers. But together with these measures, it is also vital to look at the price crisis mechanism, which means that there won't be constant intervention. And if we do step in, it is exceptional. We step in if there is a crisis to help those consumers that most need it, to make sure there aren't asymmetries and distortions in the internal market. And if we want to do this, then the so-called Iberian exemption is thrown out. And according to the text we're looking at, if there has to be price intervention, we need to be able to extend it to industry and not just individual consumers as well as SMEs. In other words, this reform undoubtedly will bring about positive results and have a positive impact on how the electricity market in the EU functions. And allow me to say something that I feel very strongly about. I would really like to thank Maria Graça Carvalho, who cannot be here today because she is a minister in the Portuguese government. She's responsible for the environment and energy. But I'd like to extend a very big thank you to her because she did a sterling job while we were debating and working on this reform. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and please try to stick to the allocated time. As the next one, I would like to ask the colleague Mita.
Thank you, Mr. President, Commissioner. The energy market reform needs to mean a few things, and it will mean some very important things for the European industry that will now have medium-term contracts with predictable prices that will allow SMEs to be competitive and to survive. This reform means another thing, that no one will have to give up on food, medication or clothes in order to pay their energy bills. And all of these things are set straight right now. Those who have been raking in profits, unfair profits of tens of millions of euros through deceit, through market manipulation, are being investigated now. Over 729 cases in the EU, and this money needs to be recovered and poured into the industry. To everyone is paid very high bills, chemical industry, steel industry, cement industry, and so on. People have to lay off people, and people who had very high energy bills. We need to gather all this money in a fund and give it back to everyone who's had to pay unfairly high bills. Thank you very much.
Teraz by som poprosil kolegyň Gamon.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mrs. Gamon.
This law is a major step towards decarbonising the gas supply and moving away from gas altogether wherever possible. It will be a key instrument for us to free ourselves from Russian blood gas. But decarbonisation starts locally, and this law supports this transition bottom up by allowing for local planning. This will be a major step, I believe, in recognising that decarbonisation strategies will differ from town to town, from village to village, and they have to work locally. I'm also really happy that we allow to decommission infrastructure where it is no longer needed, to make clear that the future will look entirely different. And we also make it clear that where there is no alternative, where we need renewable hydrogen, industry should get priority instead of wasting it elsewhere where there are better alternatives. I would like to thank Jens Geier for the wonderful job that he's done and wish all of my colleagues great success in their future endeavours. Thank you.
Danke vielmals, die Kollegin Geier. Und jetzt würde ich der Kollege Bloss bitten. Bitte.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Bloss.
Ja, herzlichen Dank, lieber Herr.
Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. This reform was going to be a huge opportunity to make the energy market in Europe fit for the future and for renewable energies. But what's happened is the taxpayers are going to have to pay the bill. Expensive forms of energy like nuclear are going to be subsidised and we're losing time and money for the energy transition. But there are a few good things that we, the Greens, managed to get through. Nobody is going to have to sit in the dark because of the massive price increases. That kind of setup will be prevented. Energy sharing will be as easy as pie. We'll be able to share energy that's produced between friends and family. So that's important. We need to continue this energy transition and the Green Deal. But instead of preparing Europe for the future, for a climate-neutral future, the Conservatives are just clinging on to the past. They want to get rid of the Green Deal, abolish it. We need more modernisation, more renewable energies and more climate protection in the next legislature. Thank you very much.
Thank you
very much. The next speaker is Mr. Vondra.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's very good that after the crisis in the previous years, we are planning to make a new design of the electricity market. Thereby, we improve stability and predictability of energy costs, and we protect consumers, citizens, as well as companies. Electricity prices will be less dependent on fossil fuel prices, and member states will have more options to intervene in the times of crisis without jeopardizing the stability of the markets. And most importantly, during the trilogue, the most green nonsense has been left out during the trilogues, and the principle of technological neutrality is respected. This means that we in the Czech Republic will set our energy mix according to our needs and not according to green wet pipe dreams. The nuclear renaissance is here. This is the main message, the main takeaway for me from this report. Therefore, I will vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Madison.
Obrigado. Head kolleegid.
Colleagues, thank you. We don't doubt that we need a reform of the energy market. In the European Union, we have different price zones, Scandinavia, the Baltic states, Central Europe, Southern Europe. Currently, we have had a speculative system, and we have seen it particularly during last winters. The energy market was totally confusing, and then we got those explanations why the prices were fluctuating. I must even agree with the Greens, but I don't know on what planet they live. I don't believe those fairy tales that are told to our electorate. The reform plan does not say that nuclear energy is one of the greenest, the most affordable and best manageable energies. And if we talk about gas and hydrogen, they are, of course, important, but we need to develop also nuclear energy. This is the future. Thank you.
Ďakujem pekne a teraz poprosím kolegyňu.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mrs. Pereira.
Obrigada.
Thank you, President. This reform of the electricity and gas markets in the EU are not really a surprise. There's nothing really new here. We're continuing the march towards a market that serves the interests of the large companies in the energy sector rather than guaranteeing access to energy at affordable prices to households and small and medium-sized companies. Although there's more use of renewable energy, it maintains the marginal cost system, and that means that the most expensive technology, gas, sets the price for all other forms of energy. That means that the prices on bills are not going to fall, but the profits of large energy companies are going to continue to rise. What was needed was to start working on the real production cost. Energy policy should not be contingent on the vagaries of the market, but rather it should be the interest of consumers. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Shaheen.
Thank you, President. Are you going to have to choose to heat or to provide food for your children? The past winter, there many people had to face that choice, and yet we're seeing that the energy companies making money hand over fist and leaving the rest in the cold. So we cannot allow this to be left up to the power of the market. We don't want cold houses. We want affordable heating. That's what these laws should provide for. Should have affordable prices, stability in the market that everybody can benefit from. Houses cannot be shut off from the network. People without electricity should not be allowed to be there without heat. We have contracts set up to make sure that unaffordable prices don't come in, and we avoid a new energy crisis as well. We're working on a new green energy market, which is good for the environment and good for our pockets as well, so that next winter nobody will have to be able to choose between heating or eating. Thank you.
Ďakujem. A teraz by som poprosil kolegu Petersena. Nech sa páči.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Peterson.
Chair, this reform of the electricity market that we will vote on later today is a big win for consumers, for producers, and for our climate law. It will mean a lot for wind turbine production in the North Sea, and it will contribute massively to the Danish ambition to become the wind sheik of Northern Europe, where we export our green electricity to the rest of Europe. It requires cooperation across the borders. We make it easier to have green energy, and we ensure that we also increase our wind energy production, and the transaction guarantee that now comes ensures that we can increase our wind energy production. All of it will need to be carried out quickly in member countries so that we can benefit from the reform that we are voting on today. This is a good day for climate and energy. Thank you.
Som poprosil kolegu Korau.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mr. Korau.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank all those who have been working on this gas package for more than 2 years. And I especially thank the rapporteur of the directive, Geyer, who with patience and passion managed to find a not easy compromise. The gas package in its complexity is above all a response to the energy crisis caused by the violent attack of Russia on Ukraine and Europe. In this directive, there are positive elements that protect European citizens from the threat of dependence on Russian gas and add countless guarantees against energy poverty and the most vulnerable citizens. However, the core of the gas directive concerns the definition of rules for the future hydrogen market, and here the result from my point of view is disappointing. We've made many improvements on the general principles of the hydrogen market, on governance and on planning, but we've not been able to introduce rules to prevent conflicts of interest between gas companies and hydrogen companies. Therefore, the risk that hydrogen is just a greenwashing operation for fossil gas is still present, and for these reasons we decided to abstain. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Teraz poprosím kolegu
And now the next speaker, Mr. Lacapelle.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, President. Colleagues, inflation is beating all records. Increases over the last 2 years in France are 43% in the electricity prices and 47% for gas. I'll remind you that France, thanks to nuclear energy and hydroelectric energy, has the lowest production prices in Europe, but nevertheless, bills of my country, faced by my countrymen, are higher than ever. You're talking about a European energy market, but you are obsessed by indexing the price of electricity on that of gas. That does not bring an effective solution to the price problems we face. The European Union is not capable of protecting our compatriots' purchasing power. We would like to liberate national systems from the absurd rules of the European Union, move towards nuclear energy and reduce VAT. That's what we would call upon for the Macron government. We also need to move away from intermittent sources of energy, such as wind power. So, in June, we will have a chance to put that message across. Thank you very much.
I don't see the colleague Kumpula-Natri in the hemicycles, and there is no catch the eye, so I would like to ask the Commissioner Renders for the Commission again, please.
Thank you, President. Let me congratulate again the Parliament for the broad provisional agreement that has been reached on the legislative files under discussions here today, and again to thank the rapporteurs and shadows for the very good cooperation. It was instrumental to deliver these legislative amendments in a short time frame with such a high quality. The Commission will work together with the Member States and stakeholders to support a swift and correct implementation of these crucial measures. We are already preparing follow-up actions resulting from the electricity market design reform and the hydrogen and decarbonised gas markets package, including new delegate and implementing acts to outline necessary detailed technical rules and several guidance documents to facilitate smooth implementation. I now look forward to a successful adoption of the legislative acts for both files in this hemicycle, which is crucial for the EU's future-proof energy market that deliver to European households and businesses. I thank you for the debate today, for your remarks and comments, and of course now again we are going to the final steps in the Parliament and the Council, but then we'll start the work with the Member States to have a correct implementation of all those new legislative files. Thank you very much for that.
Merci, Monsieur le Commissaire. Merci, Monsieur le Commissaire. A teraz by som poprosil pana spravodajcu.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Buzek.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, colleagues, for this debate. I think it's been a great debate and definitely very useful. I would like to thank Mr. Geyer, our rapporteur, but not only him, actually all of the rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs, our assistants, Mr. González Casares. Now, finally, I think we have the green light for hydrogen and biomethane, which is extremely important, and red lines when it comes to imports of gas from Russia. This is, I think, all owing to the work that we've done here in the European Parliament. We all remember what we wanted to achieve, be fit for 55. That was our overall objective. But 2 years ago, we learned that we also have to be fit right now, when we witnessed invasion of Russia on Ukraine. What does it mean in practical terms? We have to drive down imports of fossil fuels from Russia, especially those that are most detrimental to our environment, but also those that the profits from the sales of which later go to buy equipment for Russian army. So this is our lesson from the past 2 years. I think that we are much more efficient. We are also much more independent. Obviously, new challenges, or the rest of challenges, will have to go for the new term of office. We do realize that some of these challenges are linked to climate, to energy poverty and related problems. We should not, however, underestimate everything that relates to defence. There won't be energy union without defence union, although you do need energy to be able to defend yourself. So this is one of the challenges for the new term of office. Thank you for all your work, and I hope that we'll all vote yes for this package. Thank you.
Děkuji bardzo, pane profesor Buzek. Und jetzt würde ich Kollege Geyer bitten.
And now I'll give the floor to Mr. Geyer. Thank you very much, President. I'm pleased to see the Council Presidency has now arrived. The beginning of my final remarks, I wanted to thank all of the shadow rapporteurs who've been involved. It's been 2 years of work, but it was pleasant work. It was enjoyable. And you didn't make my job harder than it had to be. Of course, we had different views in the different groups. That's to be taken for granted, but I think we've been able to tie up a compromise that can satisfy a broad majority. I'd like to thank the team that supported me from the beginning, from my staff, the committee secretariat, and Parliament staff. Everyone has supported me. But I want to use the remaining speaking time to state very clearly that I have to contradict the idea that the gas package does nothing for the climate. Of course, we have to be reducing CO2 emissions as radically as possible. So what is wrong with replacing gas through low-carbon gas and then hydrogen? I don't see what's bad about that. You say scientists want to get us out of gas by 2035. Well, I say I want to get out of it as soon as possible, earlier if possible. But at this moment in time, I am not sure whether that will be possible. And it's not about headlines. It's all about practical solutions for climate change. What you were calling for, Mr. Bloss, would have meant that at the end of the day, gas transmission operators would have to write off their current gas pipeline networks. If you say from 2040 that's banned, you would have less money to invest in decarbonised networks. So rather, we have to get results, not simply get headlines. That's why I think we have taken the right path here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Geyer. Good morning. I'd like to welcome the State Secretary and the Commissioner, and now it's Mr. González Casares who has the floor. Thank you very much, Madam President. The truth is that this will go through. It will be a success, and I would like to say to the Commission and Council, don't abuse 122, because we can work more quickly than others. Some talked about emergency measures, and some referred to the Iberian case, but they did manage to reduce prices. It was Pedro Sanchez and others that managed it. I haven't read Article 66A, but these types of interventions would be possible again if there is a crisis. It's true that the Commission has their work cut out for them with this reform. It's a starting point, but consumer prices were above energy prices. But we've seen that the opposite can happen, that prices can be very low, and both situations should be avoided. First of all, because of prices and competitiveness, and also because we need incentives to continue investing in electrification and renewables. We need stable prices, affordable prices. Electricity cannot be a luxury, but it cannot be given for free either. Zero prices or even negative prices are a reality in some member states at the moment, and that is why this reform wants us to speed up our pace and to move forward with contracts for differences and PPAs as a way of making sure that investors have predictability and stability. This Commission reform says that there has to be an analysis of how forward markets work in 2 years' time. We also want to look at the marginal pricing market as well. We want more decentralization, and we want renewables to be a bigger part of the mix. But I wouldn't want to leave the rostrum without thanking my team and all teams that make this possible, Mr. Geyer, Rebecca, Pablo, Anton, Tanya, and all those who worked hand in glove with me, and of course the leader of our political group, Mrs. Irache Garcia, and I'd like to thank the Spanish presidency, the Commission and the Council that made this reform possible. No one believed in this reform in the beginning, but it is a success, and it will be a success over the next few months for European citizens. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. González Casares. The joint debate is closed, and the vote will be held today. So let us move on to the next item on the agenda. It's the Council and Commission statements on attempts to dismantle the rule of law and media freedom in Slovakia. We will kick off our debate by giving the floor to the State Secretary Mathieu Michel.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Commissioner, if I may, I'd like to kick off by saying that this union is not just a single market. Above all, it is a community of values. As a consequence, the rule of law is at the heart of our union. This union can only prosper if we work on this together, member states and institutions of the EU, in protection and the underscoring of these values. And I'd like to reassure you of the intention of the resolution of the Council to play fully its role in this. Maybe I can just recall the work we've done in Council along these lines. Last December, we finished an evaluation of the dialogue on the rule of law within the Council. I have to consider this experience as a positive one. Looking at the current way of doing things, it's been confirmed and reinforced by the conclusions of the presidency, supported by 26 delegations. The dialogue on the rule of law is an important preventative tool to allow the Council to look at the state of play on the ground across the whole union in every member state, looking at judiciary, anti-corruption laws, independence of the media, and balance of powers. This allows us to discuss all the important issues and indeed anticipate any challenges that may arise before they become genuine structural problems. Following a new rhythm, we decided to approach this country by country. In January, we looked at Spain and France, Croatia and Italy. And we're still going to discuss the situation in 4 countries, Lithuania, Latvia, Luxembourg and Cyprus, on the occasion of the Council, General Affairs Council in May. In this context, I'd like to recognise the crucial role that's been played by the Commission. We're very pleased that there's been a regular update within the framework of this dialogue from them and their annual report on the rule of law and the continuous follow-up on the essential interventions as they do carry out as guardians of the treaty. On the discussion of the media and freedom of the media and rule of law, these essential aspects in the rule of law as a whole to make sure that the democratic system is working properly. So, members, I'm very pleased to see that we've managed to agree on 2 key texts recently that will reinforce freedoms and pluralism of media throughout the Union, with the European Media Freedom Act and the directive on anti-SLAPP legislation. These texts, which were adopted in first reading recently, will come into force in the coming weeks and will not only allow a better guarantee of broader and more multifaceted media, but also to protect better the journalists in the sector. And we're very pleased to see the adoption of these texts because it will help citizens, but also the efforts of the Commission and the Member States need to focus on the correct application of this legislation so that they can be applied properly and work properly. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe I could underscore the fact we need to defend our values, we need to defend the rule of law within the Union. It's these values that will allow us to remain united against the multifaceted nature of challenges that we have to meet. And we're looking to the European elections in the Member States in coming weeks. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now, on behalf of the European Commission, Mr. Reinders.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Secrétaire d'État.
Thank you, Madam President, Secretary of State, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as I've stated on a number of occasions, particularly here in this hemicycle, we need to protect democracy and the rule of law and fundamental rights across the whole of the European Union. The Commission has intensified its efforts, and you'll be aware that the annual report on the rule of law plays a central role in that regard. In December last year, I had the opportunity to present to you the conclusions and recommendations on Slovakia in the 2023 report. At the current moment, the Commission is preparing the 5th edition of the report, which will be published in July. Today I wanted to take up a number of recent developments in Slovakia when it comes to the rule of law and the freedom of the media.
There have been several developments in Slovakia which raise serious concerns and on which we have been in close contact with the Slovak authorities. We have noted the amendments to the Criminal Code and other related acts. During our last plenary debate, I already expressed the Commission's views on these amendments, notably from the perspective of EU law requirements related to the protection of the financial interests of the Union by means of criminal law. As you are aware, these legislative changes have been adopted under a fast-track procedure at the beginning of February, despite the Commission's request to give more time for proper consultations, both at national and at European level. The amendments risk undermining the fight against corruption and the protection of the Europeans' financial interests, in particular as regards the lowering of penalties, amongst others. The Commission notes that the reform as adopted did address some of the issues that the Commission had identified regarding an earlier draft as being not in compliance with EU law. The Commission also notes that the government has decided on the 21st of February to withdraw from the fast-track procedure its plan to amend the whistleblower protection law in a way that raised serious concern as to its compliance with the EU directive and intends to present a revised version under the standard legislative procedure. On the other hand, the Commission had to take note that Slovakia decided to dissolute the Special Prosecutor's Office despite the Commission's request not to use again the fast-track procedure for that dissolution and to have sufficient guarantees to safeguard a proper handover before the dissolution. The Commission remains in contact with the Slovak authorities to further discuss the actual impact of this change, what arrangements have been made for the handling of cases, and whether the new setup ensures an effective continuation of the ongoing investigations and cases, notably concerning those cases which affect the financial interest of the Union. The Commission is assessing these changes also from the perspective of the requirements of the Recovery and Resilience Facility, and notably the continued effectiveness of Slovakia's control and audit system. We have equally taken note of the decision of the Slovak Constitutional Court of the 28th of February to temporarily suspend several provisions of the new criminal law, but not the dissolution of the Special Prosecutor's Office. We will keep monitoring the developments in that case. We hope to be able to find solutions that will ensure compliance with EU law and the commitments taken by Slovakia under the Recovery and Resilience Plan. However, we will not hesitate to take action to ensure respect of EU law and the protection of the EU financial interest as necessary, and if all the conditions of the relevant instruments are fulfilled. The 2024 report will follow up on the findings of last year's report, also in relation to media freedom and pluralism. As regards the autonomy of public service media, the 2023 report concluded that in the previous reporting period, some progress was made on strengthening the independence of public service media. However, already then, the Commission noted stakeholders' concerns over the financial situation of the public service broadcasters, as well as the abolition of the household licence fee. Since then, the Commission has taken note of the plans of the new government to introduce legislative changes regarding the public service broadcaster. The Commission understands that consultations are ongoing at national level on these plans. The Commission will monitor closely the developments to ensure that proposed changes are in compliance with EU law. The Commission recalls that the Media Freedom Act has recently been adopted by the European Parliament and the Council, and it is important that any changes to national legislations are in line with that act. As regards the safety of journalists, the 2023 report considered that some progress was made during the previous reporting period. However, the Commission notes that since then there has been no further legislative progress on the bill aimed to improve the physical safety and working environment of journalists. A 2023 survey conducted by the Jan Kuciak Investigative Centre found that 2/3 of Slovak journalists experienced threats or intimidation in the preceding 12 months, while 4 persons experienced a physical attack. The Commission takes note of concerns voiced by stakeholders that disparagement of journalists and media outlets by government exponents have been on the rise. The Commission calls on all Member States, including Slovakia, to implement the Commission recommendation on the safety of journalists. To address the phenomenon of SLAPs, the Commission presented in 2022 an ambitious package. The Commission will monitor the implementation of the Anti-SLAP Directive recently adopted by the co-legislators, as well as of the Commission's recommendation of 2022. I'm now turning to the institutional checks and balances and the civil society framework. As I mentioned before, the recent developments raised particular concerns over the lack of proper consultations of the public and of relevant stakeholders, as well as the use of fast-track legislative procedures on complex proposals. Moreover, the Commission has taken note of the recent new draft reform tabled by 4 MEPs before the Slovak Parliament at the end of March, introducing obligatory labelling of certain so-called organisations with foreign support. The Commission will follow the ongoing national discussions on this new reform very closely. In this context, let me add that the Commission is also concerned about recent amendments with regards to the Slovak Statistical Office, which contain revised grounds for appointment and dismissal of the head of office. The Commission is currently assessing whether these legislative amendments comply with the professional independence requirements of EU law on European statistics. You know that there were also some remarks from the Chief Prosecutor of the European Public Prosecutor Office about the actual situation in Slovakia, and of course we will continue to analyse together the situation, and I'm very pleased now to listen to your remarks and observations before to conclude this debate today, but not to conclude the assessment of the Commission about the situation in Slovakia. Thank you.
Grazie a lei, Commissario Reynders.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Reynders. I'm now going to give the floor to Mr. Bilčík. Mr. Bilčík, you have the floor.
Pani predsedajúca, pán komisár.
Madam President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. The current government coalition won the elections, but they did that because they, among other things, also spread fear, but they won. Now Pellegrini, in the presidential elections, spread fear, but won. But victory in the real world and not in media and the online world is about responsibility. It's about shouldering responsibility for the situation our country finds itself in, and responsibility, a sense of responsibility to make sure that citizens will be better off, and Prime Minister Fico can shout and point the finger at people around him. But in the meantime, Slovak citizens are European citizens. citizens, and they live in a world based on rules. If you throw a spanner in the works of the judiciary, and if you don't care about justice for all, then there will be consequences. In Europe, what wins the day is justice for everyone. And if Slovak citizens cannot turn to free media to get information, then it's not going to work. Free media is one of the pillars of EU society. If you think that you're omnipotent and you can do anything you like, well, you can't, because European society is based on rules. And it all depends on Prime Minister Fico and his government, and we'll have to see whether they will respect the rules. This isn't a Brussels vendetta. This is about the fact that Prime Minister Fico cannot govern with dignity and on the basis of rules. Thank you.
Di intervenire il collega Hohut. Prego.
Drogie Słowaczki, drodzy
Dear citizens of Slovakia, in Poland we know full well how difficult it is to repair and make right what populists have done and have destroyed. Each day we discover new instances of misuse of public finance by the previous government, and our government is consistently working on improving and restoring the rule of law. We are all very deeply worried about what's happening in Slovakia. The liquidation of corruption authorities, anti-corruption authorities, pro-Russian policy and rejection of support for Ukraine. This is not acceptable. We do respect your choices, but please remember that here in the European House you have resources that you can draw upon in difficult times of populism. Let's remember that we are working on channeling funding directly to the NGOs. We want to build the European Union together. Do not follow Orban's path. The place for Slovakia is in the middle of Europe. Ďakujem a veľa šťastia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kohut. The next speaker is Mr. Hojsik. You have the floor, sir.
Vážené kolegyne a kolegovia.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Prime Minister Fico is tearing the rule of law apart in Slovakia, so we have to ask the question, what is going to happen when he's pushing Slovakia into the hands of Putin? We had a special prosecutor's office, we had a renovation plan. That was to provide a guarantee to protect the provision of EU money. And today we are seeing the risk that millions of EU euros will be lost to Slovakia. He wanted to replace the RTVS by a party-controlled version. There was another attack on a TV station in Slovakia yesterday. NGOs and CSOs are being hounded, as Putin has done in Russia, by defining them as foreign agents. So the rule of law is been reduced to rubble. And now we see what was said in the Voice of Europe yesterday. The Czech Secret Service has shown that this was a front, this piece of media. So we're seeing this red carpet being laid out for Putin to get into Europe, and after the elections may be too late.
Thank you, Mrs. Benova.
Nice to see you again. Dobrý deň, dámy a páni.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner. Well, I'm pleased you talked about the protection of the financial interests of the EU, but it's a shame that you're not looking more deeply into the financial interests of Ursula von der Leyen. Well, I understand that that's not the subject today, but there's a lot of criticism levelled at the Republic of Slovakia, but I think it's important that you're saying that was a lack of response to the questions that are being asked. But Mr. Kohut also levelled accusations. Now, we also have to talk about economic policies in terms of giving economic aid to Ukraine. But we are a government that wants peace, whereas you just want to spread war. Slovakia is a small country. It's very close to Ukraine. I could very briefly respond to some of the other colleagues. At the end of this is the end of a parliamentary term. I understand that many of you need to take out some of your own frustrations. But let's be careful here. Slovakia is a small country, but it's a proud country. If you criticise Slovakia on every possible occasion, that will damage the image of Slovakia in the EU, whereas we ought to be cooperating, not fighting.
Thank you. Please stick to your speaking time. Mr. Muresan.
Thank you, Madam President, dear colleagues. The European Union is a union based on rules and it is based on values. And these rules are meant to serve the people in every corner of the European Union. The common rules and the common values that the Union is based on are the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression, the freedom of people to say what they feel, what they want, to support whom they want, to criticize whom they want, the rule of law, fighting against corruption, building strong, independent, resilient institutions, and a strong and independent judiciary serving the citizens. We are seeing that these values are in danger today in Slovakia. And the rules in Europe are also clear. Whoever wants to receive European support has to respect European values. We as European Union would like to support the people of Slovakia in their strive for a better life as the European Union is supporting citizens everywhere in Europe. We have created, with Next Generation EU, the biggest package of economic recovery ever. And we want the people of Slovakia to continue benefiting from this. But let me say very clearly, whoever wants to receive European financial support needs to respect European values. With his current actions, Mr. Fico and his government are endangering the financial support from the European Union. If they continue to attack the rule of law, if they continue to attack European rules and European values, which are good for the people of Slovakia, they risk the European support for the people of Slovakia. We do not want this to happen. We hope Mr. Fico stops being an obstacle in the people of Slovakia's will to receive European support. Thank you very much.
Grazie. A facoltà ora di intervento.
Thank you very much. Mr. Radakovsky is the next speaker. Thank you very much, President, Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen. Over the last 5 years, there's been censure in Slovakia. The media was in the hands of the liberals. In Slovakia, there aren't attempts to control media. They're trying to get rid of censure, and those who do not understand, who are saying the opposite, aren't right. Those who are criticizing RTVS want to maintain censorship. Now, as a judge, I can give you a simple example. In 2019, in the European Parliament, Miroslav Radakovsky became a member. He was 6th on the list for the European Parliament. And over the last 5 years, the RTVS never gave me the possibility to appear and to present and to represent thousands of Slovak voters. And they're a public broadcaster, and that's just one example. I could give you hundreds of examples. This shows that the Slovak Republic's public broadcaster is or backs the ideas of those who want it to be free and not those who might have different ideas. This is the reality. I am old. I have no reason to lie. Please believe me.
Grazie. E ora passiamo al catch the...
Thank you very much. Now, catch the eye. I have several requests. The debate is sensitive, but I'm going to give everyone the floor because we have time. Mrs. Šojdrová.
Dov'è? Non è in aula l'onorevole Šojdrová.
Mrs. Šojdrová doesn't seem to be in the chamber, so Mrs. Lexman is next.
Vážení kolegovia, je absolútne kľúčové, aby sa EU inštitúcie pri hodnotení...
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's decisive that we keep to subsidiarity in a strict manner and we don't interfere in national member states' competences. Here in the European Parliament, there are certain measures that have been adopted. We want to protect the media, we want to protect freedom, And this is something that has to be demanded in Slovakia as well. We see how journalists are harassed, how justice is trampled underfoot, and these sort of steps lead to the lack of freedom. We know the history of totalitarianism and Mr. Mečer's government as well. This is a development that we shouldn't allow in Slovakia.
Prego.
Thank you, Mr. Diezik.
Ďakujem pekne. Dovolím si obrátiť sa na pani.
Thank you very much. I wanted to address Mrs. Beňová, who's probably not even in the room anymore, but Mrs. Beňová, you've been an MEP for 20 years now. You've got plenty of experience. But I get the impression that when I look at what the Commission is doing and what's going on in Slovakia, it sounds, from what you're saying, that it's the opposition's responsibility, that we're to blame. But the Commission is negotiating and deciding on the basis of the concrete steps taken by the government of Robert Fico. These are steps which damage the rule of law and are a threat to Slovakia's belonging in the EU at all. We're being accused of being negative towards Slovakia and that we should be ashamed. But if you look at the policies of Robert Fico, he's cuddling up to the fascists, and that is truly shameful. We should not allow fascists to be speaking of these things in this House. We need to avoid Slovakia moving towards Putin. We do not want more shame to be brought upon Slovakia and its future in the European Union. We all want to use the legal instruments at our hands to struggle against this.
Trubadel, prego.
Mrs. Trubadel.
Dear colleagues, it took us years to come up with legal action and funds freezing for Hungary after Orban destroyed democracy and judiciary. Yet, what took Orban a decade, Fico may achieve in less than a year. It is essential that we wake up and take a strong and unified stance in the face of Fico's autocratic grip. Special anti-corruption office, public broadcaster, criminal law amendments, everything is on the fire line. We do not have time to lose in Slovakia. With the election of President Pellegrini, the system will seize the full grip over the independent institutions. Freezing funds, Article 7 procedure, clear messaging, that is what we need. Dear citizens of Slovakia, the European Parliament stands with you. By standing together in defense of democracy, we must send a powerful message both to Slovakia and to all our European citizens. Democracy matters, and we will do everything to protect it. The EU cannot let down its own citizens by prioritizing fake stability. We need democratic Slovakia, and Europe must act now. Thank you.
Grazie a lei, onorevole Roth.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Roth-Neďalová.
Pani predsednička, ďakujem. Je to taká zaujímavá debata, že tu je, myslím, že dokonca až...
Thank you very much. Well, this certainly is an interesting debate. There are 15 MEPs who seem to be interested. It's interesting for the European Union, but it seems that very few have registered for the debate. I think that it's pointless bringing these national debates to the EU forums, but pretty much all of the MEPs from Slovakia are here. I think it was interesting to see what Mr. Reinders said. I'm glad that you clarified your position from December last year. We are grateful to communication with Slovakia. The Slovak government has the right to adopt laws that we see as being appropriate. Of course, we are in the process of communication with the Commission to ensure that our measures are in line with European law. As Mrs. Beňová said, the Slovak government does have a bilateral relationship with Ukraine as well. I think that these criticisms that we are pro-Russian is just not based on reality. We have a border, we have welcomed refugees, and I think that this polarization that you're trying to give rise to is not real. Slovaks see us as a coalition, and we need to be listening to our citizens, put an end to polarization, to respond to the previous colleague, probably you've never even been to Slovak. Probably you've never met Mr. Fico. But as you're moving towards the European elections, you're just trying to invent some controversial subjects. But please do not talk about my country in these terms, because you might end up saying stupid things. Thanks.
Dámy a páni, návrh na politické ovládnutie verejného.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. In Bratislava, there's been an attempt to get control of the media, and I think the Soviets back in 1980 would have been proud of this attempt. So we in Europe are looking at adopting laws to protect the media and prevent attacks on the public media, because an attack on public media is an attack on democracy. The steps that Fico is taking is restricting freedom in our country. It's hardly surprising that Orban and Fico are good friends. 6 months ago, Hungary interfered in the situation in Slovakia, and now we've seen this state of affairs happening again. The Hungarian media and government have supported the candidate who won. This sets a dangerous precedent, and these are aspects that need to be covered as well. I'd like to thank everybody who have tried to protect democracy. Thank you.
Prego.
Mrs. Melchior.
Thank you very much. If we want to live in democracy, if we want to live in countries where we're equal before the courts, where we all have the same rights, where it's not who has the most money who gets the most rights, then we need to become defenders of democracy, defenders of the rule of law. We need to believe what autocrats are saying when they run for election, and we need to respond quickly, because delayed protection of rule of law is no protection of the rule of law and democracy. We have no choice but to defend the democracy and rule of law of Europe. And that is why we need to respond swiftly by using the measures that we do have within the European Union, and by sending strong political messages that undermining rule of law, dismantling free media is not acceptable if you are an EU member. We have no choice if we want to live in democracy, if we want to live without the interference of third countries such as Russia. Thank you.
Grazie a lei, onorevole.
Thank you very much. I'll now give the floor to Mr. Hidvegi.
Thank you. Recently in Slovakia, there was an election, and the Slovak people have made a very clear decision. All points of view or opinions were put on a table, and the Slovaks made a very clear choice. Now, some of you may not like their decision, but it doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant. You don't have to like the result. You have to just respect the popular decision of the Slovak people. This is what the Czechs and the Slovaks in 1968 fought for, or Hungarians in 56, the Poles later on in 81. Our freedom to choose our democratic path. This Parliament or the European Commission, you are not a superior authority over the popular decision. It is about popular sovereignty. We in Central Europe fought very hard to regain our liberty and our freedom to choose and make our own decision about our future, and we will not let you take it away from us. Just respect the decision of the Slovak people and the Slovak government. Thank you.
Grazie. E ora per le...
Thank you very much. And now for the conclusions, on behalf of the Commission, Mr. Reinders.
Merci, Madame la Présidente, Mesdames et Messieurs les députés.
President, members, I'd just like to thank you once again, because I think you've shown the desire to pursue dialogue on the rule of law in all member states. The Commission is fully at the disposal of the Parliament in that regard, and I'm very happy to meet you in other formats. Given the situation in Slovakia, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the desire of the Slovak authorities to continue dialogue on the new reforms. When it comes to the changes to the criminal code and the dissolution of the Special Prosecutor's Office, I'll remind you that the Commission has already passed on its views to the Slovak authorities and are closely following future developments. The Commission will not hesitate to take any necessary measures to preserve the rule of law and to protect the financial interests of the Union. As has been stated during the debate, respect for the rule of law is the best way to ensure budgetary support from the European Union for the benefit of Slovak citizens. But we are very attentive to the rule of law. There should be no opposition drawn between elections and the rule of law. All actions taken in the Court of Justice are decisions taken by majority. Having a majority in a parliament does not exempt you from the requirement to respect the rule of law and respect fundamental rights. That is valid for all member states. There are appeals to the Court of Justice facing all member states. Thank you very much. And now on behalf of the Council, Secretary of State, Mr. Michel.
Madame Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner. Thank you very much for your comments during this very important debate. Once again, I'd like to firmly underscore the importance of our common values and our commitment to defend them. This is a joint and several responsibility amongst all institutions of the European Union and its member states. So may I reassure you that the Presidency and the Council as a whole considers the rule of law to be extremely important, fight against corruption, protection of journalists and the defence of freedom of the media and freedom of expression. Thank you very much once again for your attention.
Thank you very much to all of our colleagues. That closes the debate. Session is suspended for a few minutes and will resume at 11 o'clock with the declarations of the President on International Roma Day.
Grazie.
have a quick round of speakers relating to International Roma Day, which is celebrated today. So, dear colleagues, International Roma Day is a day to celebrate Romani culture, history and language and pay tribute to Europe's largest ethnic minority. Romani people can be proud Europeans, proud of their contribution to the rich mosaic of our European societies. They form an integral part of our communities, but even if so, the reality is that too many Romani men and women in Europe still live in the margins of society. It is unacceptable that discrimination and racism continue to plague our communities. For far too long, Romani people have suffered under unfounded bias and prejudice, restricted access to education, difficulties in entering the labour market, and insufficient healthcare represent just a few of the injustices Roma people face. In our Europe, we cherish our differences, our unique traditions, our cultures and our diversity. We know that this is where our true strength lies. That means that Roma people living within our union's borders must enjoy the same rights, the same treatment, but also the same opportunities, the same chances as any other European citizen. Romani children should have every reason to expect the promise of Europe to deliver for them too. In the European Parliament, we will continue to play our part in driving positive change. This remains an ongoing effort, but together I am confident that we will manage to achieve a better, more equal and more just future for us all. So now we will have one quick round of political groups speakers on this issue, speaking from their chairs, starting with Peter Pollak for the EPP Group.
Thank you for the floor, colleagues. During this mandate, this is the first time that we are celebrating in the plenary session the International Roma Day. As a Roma man myself from Slovakia, I am very pleased by this fact. Also, Roma children are European children, even though the constitution of the member state prohibit discrimination. We have billions of euros. We have various strategies, and yet there are Roma children which are still discriminated in Europe. To be born as a Roma child is not a pleasant experience. A Roma child is innocent, and yet they have to spend all their childhood in poverty without sewage. When they enter elementary school, they are placed in a segregated classroom. We are protecting wolves, bears, and yet we are stealing the future of these Roma children. Europe has shown that it's capable to fight for the rights of minorities, but in this fight we are clearly failing. Let's remember that Roma children are equal to all other children in Europe, and they have a right to fulfill their dreams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pollak. And now, on behalf of the S&D Group, Evin Incir.
Madam President, colleagues, first and foremost, I want to, today at the International Roma Day, congratulate all our Romani in the EU and beyond. Today is a day we celebrate Romani, who are the largest ethnic minority in Europe, their language and their culture. EU's motto, United in Diversity, includes every and each of our citizens, including the Romani. However, I wish I could say that the EU has made progress in ensuring all our people equal rights, because the Union and our member states have failed totally in fighting anti-Gypsyism and discrimination towards Romani and travellers. Institutional, structural and intersectional racism exists in all our member states. Roma still encounter significant obstacles in obtaining equal rights, access to rights and services such as quality education, employment and health care. In at least almost half of our countries, 80% of Roma population are in danger of poverty, and over half of the population lack adequate housing. Words of actions are cheap, and therefore we need to go from words action to ensure their rights.
Thank you, Ms. Insir. Thank you. Now, on behalf of the Renew Europe group, Lucia Duris-Nicholsonova.
Medzinárodný deň.
The International Roma Day, this is what we celebrate, and not Romas in segregated villages. They have nothing to celebrate. They have no drinking water, no gas, no running water. Their children die of malnutrition, and they are drug addicted so that they don't feel hunger. They receive various benefits, but not old pensioners' benefits, because they don't live this long. They face discrimination. Their children are in segregated school. They hardly learn write and read. They have no qualification. And politicians do nothing for them because they are too overwhelmed by discrimination and racism. We know that at the European level we adopt resolutions. However, these are ignored by the member states. Member states with marginalized Roma communities must start solving the situation in Roma settlements.
Next for the Green Group, Romeo France.
Mein Name ist Romeo Franz.
I'm Romeo Franz. I'm from the Sinti population and I lost 6 relatives in the Holocaust. This is an important day for us, but the situation for Romani people in the east of Europe, Romania, Bulgaria and in the Ukraine is not in line with human dignity. Over 1,000 Kampatki Roma live in Ukraine. They're marginalised from politics and civil society. They don't have medical care, they don't have education or running water. And that is an inhuman situation. And that's something that I've seen with my own eyes. We should not only on the 8th of April or other days, special days, think of people with Romani roots. We should deal with these issues on a daily basis. We're talking about human rights, the rights of women and children. But the reality is that Eastern European Romani people are being marginalised. The European Parliament should finally recognise people with Romani backgrounds as equal to all other people. And this is a call to all members, to all political parties. We don't want to see soapbox oratory. You need to fight against the preconceptions you have in your head. The speaker is interrupted.
Die Schande Europas sind seine Rassisten.
Okay, I give the floor next, on behalf of the ECR group, to Elżbieta Rafalska. Ms. Rafalska, you have the floor.
Szanowni Państwo.
Ladies and gentlemen, given this International Day of the Roma people, I'd like to wish all the Romas in Europe, in particular in Poland, from where Papusza comes, an outstanding poet. And I'd like to say that many Romas are living on the margins of society. Therefore, we need sensible measures, social, cultural, and otherwise, so that this group of people can live in dignity. But I'd like to focus on Roma culture, musical, literary, dance culture. All these elements allowed the Roma in the last 10 centuries to preserve their cultural identity. But integration must be wise and cannot be...
Susanna Ceccardi.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Well, I apologise for breaking the view of other groups on International Roma Day, but we have to say things as they are. Roma is a very patriarchal culture. There was a Romani girl in Italy a few days ago who was beaten by her parents because she was stealing too little in the metro. It's very patriarchal, but in this case, women's rights aren't of any interest to you. You see Romani women in the streets with very small children begging, but children's rights aren't of any interest to you either. We have seen in Roma camps the sanitation conditions are terrible, but that doesn't seem to bother you either. You are hypocrites in all of this. Thank you.
I give the floor now on behalf of the left group to Patricia Caromaya.
Gracias, Presidenta. Hoy hablaré de las...
Thank you, President. Today I'll speak about women and Roma and Sinti children. This is a political conflict that is at the heart of the European Union. I'd like to say that we need to think of Marixa, a gypsy woman who lost her child because she was threatened and physically threatened until she passed out. And I repeat this, ladies and gentlemen, she lost her child just because she was a Roma woman. And would you like to be treated like Maritza? The solution to this political conflict needs to be ensuring full political participation of the Roma and Sinti populations. Let's not be fooled. The threat of the return of totalitarianism is a problem for all of us, because fascism will be the death of Europe. But I have hope.
Okay, I think you lost your microphone. Thank you. So this concludes this round, and we go straight to the voting session, chaired by Vice President Wieland.
Die Sitzung ist wieder aufgenommen. Herr Kollege Lambert zur Geschäftsordnung.
The sitting is resumed. Mr. Lambert's point of order.
Mr. President, you have a reputation to defend. Yesterday, the President of the Parliament ran the voting session with a speed that defied imagination. So I think that the bar now is very high for you to emulate that performance. Thank you.
Vielen Dank für die Blumen, Herr Kollege Lambert.
Well, thank you very much for those kind words. I'm not sure I will be able to do that quite so fast. Mine has to be interpreted from Schwabian to German and then to the other languages, whereas the President can speak fluent English.
Die Frau Kollegin war, glaube ich, zuerst ein Herr Verhofstadt.
Estimado Presidente.
President, allow me to take a moment to speak in the European Parliament to speak about an individual who lost their life this week. This was a European politician. The Basque Country used to suffer from an economic crisis and terrorism. It was a problem for Europe, but now they are. It is a region which is a model for Europe. It has faced up to violence and also has contributed to a deep transformation of the region, and this is with a strong social model. Rest in peace.
Herr Kollege Verhofstadt.
Mr. Verhofstadt is next.
Much, Mr. President. I have, in fact, a point of order to ask you to change the agenda of today, because today I have to tell you I'm that sick of what is happening in Ukraine. That sick, why? Because as you have all seen the last 20 days, there are these numerous attacks by the Russians on the ordinary cities of Ukraine, hospitals, power installations, apartment blocks. And what I find scandal is that Europe, who is opening the door for Ukraine, and the European Council is not even capable in such an urgency to decide to send a number of anti-missile systems to Ukraine. There are in total, Mr. President, Mr. Borrell told us that 100 of these Patriot systems in Europe. And they ask 7 to protect their cities. And we Europeans, we invite them to come to the European Union, but are not capable to do so. And my proposal to you, Mr. President, is that we in any way, all these discharges of all these institutions, 55 in total, that we put them on the next agenda in Strasbourg. And before we don't discharge them until the Council, who can easily make an agreement on that, do a meeting to deliver these 7 Patriot systems to Ukraine. At least the discharge of the Council, at least I propose that the discharge of the Council is withdrawn off the agenda. Thank you very much.
Herr Kollege Verhofstadt, ich glaube...
Mr. Verhofstadt, I think you will see from the reaction of colleagues that a lot of people appreciated your words. But I think this was more of a rhetorical point that you were making here. Is this a formal request that you're making?
On the discharge of the Council, it's a formal request. I ask that you withdraw the discharge of the Council off the agenda until that they have taken a decision on the Patriots.
Darf ich jetzt zunächst fragen, wer diesem Antrag...
Could I ask who would support this proposal?
Ich denke, das ist mehr als die dafür erforderliche...
I believe that is more than the number required. Okay, just one moment.
Über den Antrag entschieden werden kann und wir werden unmittelbar vor dem...
Okay, well, we will make a decision before we get to that file. So we have that formal request that has been put in now. It is admissible. I think... congratulations on the birthday in any case.
Wir beginnen nun mit den Abstimmungen. Zunächst der Auftrag.
Let's start the voting. First of all, request of waiver of immunity of Gunnar Beck. Who's in favour? Against? Abstentions? That's adopted. Then we have request for waiver of immunity of Mr. Amerix. In favour? Against? Abstentions? That's adopted. And we will check that vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Has everyone voted? Vote is closed.
Angenommen.
Adopted.
Le Breton, Bericht von Herrn Kollegen Le Breton betreffend die Aufhebung von Frau Kollegin Donath. Wer ist dafür? Dagegen? Enthaltungen?
For, against, abstentions, that is adopted. Then we have Mr. Le Breton's report request of the lifting of the waiver of the immunity of Mr. Usakov's. For, against, abstentions, adopted. A check here again. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Has everybody voted? Vote is closed.
Angenommen.
Adopted. Then we have objection pursuant to Rule 111, Paragraph 3, specific hygiene requirements for certain meat, fishery products, dairy products and eggs. A roll call vote. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Has everybody voted? Vote is closed.
Der Antrag ist abgelehnt.
That is rejected. Then we come to agricultural and environmental conditions roll call vote. Vote is open. Vote is closed. That is adopted. Then I am told that Mrs. Labajova has asked for the floor. Please go ahead.
Hello, dear President. I would like to take the floor according to the Rule 195 together with Articles. I would like to take the floor according to the Rule 195 together with Articles 1 and 3 of the Annex 1 of the Rules of Procedure of the European Parliament. As many colleagues well know, since that issue has been reported by media, I participated as an applicant in the selection process for the EU SME envoy, and my lodged complaint is still pending. I therefore clearly have a conflict of interest in this vote, and I will consequently not take part in the vote on Amendment 35. I think that transparency and public interest must always come first, a consideration which does not seem to be the case for everyone in the Commission, everyone in this Parliament who prefer party interests and personal favours to rules and principles. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Frau Kollegin Dlabajova.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dlabajova. So we come to the vote as a whole, roll call vote. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That is adopted. Amendment 9, roll call vote. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt? Die Abstimmung ist geschlossen.
Everybody voted. Vote is closed. That is rejected. Amendment 20 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 1 in favour, against, abstentions. Check that. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt? Die Abstimmung ist
Has everybody voted? Vote is closed.
angenommen.
Adopted. Amendment 24, roll call vote. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Everybody voted. Vote is closed.
Angenommen. Antrag
Adopted. Amendment 25, roll call vote. Vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Has everybody voted? Vote is closed.
Antrag 9.
Amendment 9, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That is adopted. 21, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Voting is closed. That's rejected. 22 in 2 parts. First part, roll call vote. Vote is open. Everybody voted. Vote is closed. That's rejected. Part 2, vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's rejected. Amendment 2 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Rejected. 3, roll call vote. Vote is open. Everybody voted. Vote is closed. Rejected. 4, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's rejected. 26, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? The vote is closed. Rejected. Amendment 27 in favour. Against. Abstentions. That's adopted. 5 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Rejected. 6 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Adopted. 34 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Rejected. 7 in favour. Against. Abstentions. Rejected. 10 in favour. Against. abstentions rejected. 28 in favour, against, abstentions adopted. 23 in favour, against. I will check Amendment 23. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. Rejected. 11 in favour, against, abstentions, that is adopted. 12 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 13 in favour, against, abstentions, that is adopted. Amendment 29, 2 parts. First part, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's adopted. Second part, vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's adopted. Amendment 37, also in 2 parts, roll call vote. Vote is open for the first part. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's rejected. The second part then falls. Original text, paragraph 158. First part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Second part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. We will check the second part of paragraph 158. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. Adopted. Paragraph 188, original text in 2 parts. First part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Second part in favour, against, abstentions. That's adopted. Paragraph 190, original text in favour, against, abstentions adopted. I will check paragraph 188, part 2. Vote is open. Please do call out in time if you want a vote to be checked. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That is adopted. 191, Amendment 30, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. Adopted. 192, original text, first part, for, against, adopted. For, against, abstentions adopted. Third part, for, against, abstentions adopted. 193, 2 parts. First part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Second part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. 194, original text, part 1. First part in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Second part, we will check that. Paragraph 194, first part. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? The vote is closed. That is adopted. 194, second part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Amendment 8 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Amendment 14. So we will check Amendment 8. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Voting is closed. That's rejected. 14. In favour, against, abstentions rejected. Paragraph 196. So we'll check 14. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's rejected. Then we have paragraph 196. He's in favour, against, abstentions. That's adopted. Amendment 31 in 2 parts. Roll call vote. First part. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. That's adopted. Second part. Vote is open. Has everybody voted? A vote is closed. Adopted. Paragraph 197, original text in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Paragraph 198 in 2 parts, original text, first part in favour, against, abstentions adopted. Second part in favour, against. I will check. Vote is open. So part 2, 198. Has everybody voted? Vote is closed. Adopted. After paragraph 212, we have an oral amendment from Mr. Stefanets.
Mikro, bitte.
Microphone for the speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment is as follows. Highlights that SMEs make up 99% of European businesses in the EU, and that the setup of the SME envoy post is a key in providing a strong voice to hundreds of thousands of SMEs across the EU. Underlines that a high level of expertise and specialization are needed for an SME envoy, and that this was the case in the selection of the successful candidate. Welcomes that the Commission has followed a formal, fair and multi-step recruitment process in the hiring of the SME envoy, and stresses that the multiple assessment criteria were followed during the recruitment process. Highlights that at the moment of the announcement of the recruitment of the SME envoy, no objection were made by any of the commissioners, and that questions were raised only after one-sided information were leaked to the media, therefore transforming this issue into a political one. Notes that double standards should not be applied by the Greens group in the European Parliament, particularly since, in certain cases, Green ministers from the EU member states hired several staff members without the formal recruitment process. Underlines that the assessment procedures for posts such as the SME envoy should not be used for party or personal campaigning goals. Thank you indeed.
Gibt es Einwände gegen diesen
Are there any objections against that oral amendment?
Das sind 38.
I think that's 38. So we're not going to be voting on that oral amendment. So we now move on to Amendment 35. Roll call vote. The vote is open.
Haben alle abgestimmt?
Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. And that's carried. Amendment 15 now. In favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. Amendment 16 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 17 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 36 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 18 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 32. Roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. And that's rejected. Amendment 33. Roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. Rejected. So we're now going to vote on the resolution as a whole. That's a roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. And it is adopted. So, the Novikov Report, Discharge 2022, the EU General Budget, European Parliament. So, the decision as a whole, roll call vote. Vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. And that's adopted. Now the motion for a resolution. Amendment 50, those in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 51 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 19 in favour? Against? Abstentions? That's carried. 20. Okay, so Amendment 19 then. We're going to check that. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote's closed. And that is carried. Amendment 20 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 52 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. 35. Roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. Rejected. Amendment 36 in favour? Against? Abstentions rejected. Amendment 48. Roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. And that's carried. Amendment 37. Roll call vote. Vote is open. Everyone voted. The vote is closed. And that's rejected. Amendment 38 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. 53 in favour, against, abstentions rejected. Amendment 13, roll call vote. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. That's carried. Paragraph 38, original text, 2 parts. First part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Paragraph 40 now. Okay, we'll check paragraph 38, second part. The vote is open. Has everyone voted? The vote is closed. Carried. So paragraph 40 in 2 parts. First part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Second part in favour, against, abstentions carried. Paragraph 42, 2 parts. The original text, first part in favour, against, abstentions carried.